Hi, and welcome to the show, and it is brought to you by the Bay of Quinte Men's Soccer League, battling for the Merchants Cup for over 100 years, and also brought to you by Four Seasons Sports out of Belleville, been serving the Bay of Quinte area for almost 50 years. Check them out on North Front Street. It's an amazing shop for all your sporting needs. Ike and family will have you covered. So it's going to be an amazing show today because we have a guest today who is a legend in his own mind and in his own sport as well. He will be the MC, the upcoming Canadian Motorcycle Hall of Fame banquet in Surrey, BC. It's going to be an exciting time coming up in February. Mr. Frank Wood, welcome to the show, my friend.
Thank you very much, Scott. It's a pleasure to be here. This, I take it, you mentioned soccer right off the get-go, and I'm going to suggest that perhaps this is a new venue for you, motorsports, motorcycle racing in particular.
Absolutely. I'm completely new to the sport. I've been lucky enough to have one of my best buddies of all time keep me abreast of all the different parts of the sport that I don't know much about, but just gets me intrigued. And he introduced me to you, his longtime buddy, Frank Wood, many years ago, and I've been intrigued about what you've always done. So that's why you're here today, to chat a little bit about the sport that you love and maybe introduce some soccer people that watch my show to a new sport. So tell us a little bit about your involvement in this incredible sport that you've been doing for, tell us how long you've been involved in the motorcycle game.
Oh, boy. In the game, since I was 16 years of age, as soon as I could get a motorcycle, I had one, and that was all there was to it. As far as the making a living, or part of my living through motorcycling, through announcing and writing and what have you, that all just sort of gradually fell together as the years went by. But I don't know if you want a history on me, Scott, or how I got involved was simply going to a motorcycle race and
Sure.
pits and meeting a few guys, and the next thing you know, I want to give it a try, and go out and give it a try, and did relatively well, and then a fellow racer, actually, I will give credit to a member of the Canadian Motorcycle Hall of Fame, which a fellow that I'll be seeing in a couple of weeks in British Columbia, and that is former national #1 dirt track racer Peter Grant.
Okay.
Grant had some splendid rides, by the way, in your hometown of Belleville at the Normcar Memorial races that used to run at the fairgrounds there. So anyway, I'm getting a little diverse here. Peter offered me a chance to announce a motorcycle race, just like right out of the blue. And I said, yeah, I wouldn't mind trying that. So I did that, and I did a dirt track race on his behalf, and I worked with the Canadian Motorcycle Association and the Canadian Motorsport Racing Corporation, I think they call themselves, CMRC, anyway, the Quebec-based dirt track promoters, and and then I had the good fortune to be given a tap on the shoulder at the plant that I was working in. They were doing a downsizing, and I wasn't particularly happy in working in a 12-hour shift work and in a factory thing. A lot of good people there, mind you, but when given the opportunity, I bailed out. And I'm going to mention a few people, if you don't mind, Scott, because
No, of course not.
people who have made a big difference. I mentioned Peter Grant, for instance, but when I left my previous job, which, by the way, was at Procter & Gamble, great company, don't regret a single moment I worked for them. It just didn't fit me. I went to see my lawyer and to get some advice. And he said, Bray Kaufman, by the way, is the lawyer's name, no longer working, but his daughter's sort of taking the reins at the firm on North Front Street there in Belleville. Anyway, Ray was chatting with me, and he said, Frank, this is a great opportunity for you. He says, what you need to do is do not go out and get a job. And I kind of looked at him and thought, well, the amount of money that I got in my severance isn't going to last very long, so how am I going to feed my family? And he says, well, you've already commented to me that you enjoy the announcing thing, but you only get to do it every second weekend because of your job commitments. And you enjoy the writing thing, and he says, now you have the time to pursue what you want to do. And Scott, he pointed his finger at me, and he says, do it and stay the course. I'll never forget those words. And it worked out. Thanks, Ray. It
Wow.
worked out really well. I got a job at Shannonville Motorsport Park, mowing lawns and just doing basic maintenance on the weekdays, and then announcing at the local regional series on the weekends that they ran. And then the Nationals came to town, the CSBK Nationals, and the promoter of that series was Colin Fraser. He recently sold the company to Ross Milson, but nonetheless, the company goes on, and certainly Colin remains keenly involved. He's working with TSN and what have you nowadays. And Colin said to me, you know, I might have a job for you next year on the National Series. And away we went. Further to that, he was promoting a race series down in the States called the Moto ST Series. We ran that from 2006 through 2009. And again, with Colin's guidance and mentorship, the company that he was working for purchased the rights to AMA racing. And so we ran the AMA racing for 2009, and then there was another switch at the top. You know, it was a recession year, if you may remember, or years. So things changed at the top, and what have you. And my foray into America was at that point cut off. I came home and happy to be here.
That's
Why
awesome.
do I ramble on today?
No, I mean you have a storied career, and it's been decades and decades of passion that you've showed for the sport, and you've been able to work alongside some of the legends of the sport. Tell us a little bit about your involvement and working with Pat Gonzalez. I know he's a legend.
Yeah, yeah. As a matter of fact, I'll go back. You remember me mentioning that Peter Grant asked me to announce. The first thing I did, I was working at a motorcycle dealership at the time, and Pat happened to be our representative from Q107 in Toronto, the FM station. He was a salesman he was on air as well for a while, but he was a salesman and he came around quite often. So, and I certainly knew what he did because I'd been to the races. So anyway, I called him up and arranged for a meeting over coffee one morning, and he gave me some key tips, Scott, that I still use to this day.
Nice.
You know, how many years later, 30 years later, whatever. But he really was very, very helpful in getting me started. And I've had the good pleasure to work alongside him at a number of events, including the Corduroy Enduro, which celebrated its 70th anniversary last year under the guidance of Blair Sharpless. Working with Pat is a real big feather in my cap.
Well, tell me a little bit about, you just mentioned it, so I'm just going to nudge you a little bit on the Corduroy Enduro. Tell us a little bit about what that involves and the incredible history it has.
Well, 70 years it's been running. We were interrupted with the COVID, go figure. But since 1953, they've been running that event, and it is I would invite anyone who has not seen the footage from the Corduroy Enduro to go on that site. It's the Welders Helpers Corduroy Enduro. You can find it on YouTube, of course, and what have you, and just look at what those riders do. The incredible stuff that they have to fight their way through, wet rocks and logs and river crossings and impossible downhills and equally impossible uphills. It's really quite incredible to watch, and when you see the guys who really know how to do it, it's quite good. They got a lot of spectator points for the Corduroy Enduro, but the history goes on. You know, the manufacturers are so keenly involved nowadays, and I won't rattle off a bunch of manufacturers' names, but if you go up there, for instance, on a Thursday, Scott, you can get test rides on the new trail bikes being offered by whoever. I will drop a name, and this may surprise a lot of people, but one of the attendees, they have a display there, they have test rides on their motorcycles, what have you, is Harley Davidson. And Harley Davidson, of course, doesn't produce any off-road bikes, but they have what they call an adventure bike, and they allow people to ride it on the roads in and around Gooderham, Ontario, which is home base for the Corduroy Enduro.
That's interesting. Wow. So tell us a little bit about, I know that you've been in the sport for so long, and that's why you've been asked to be MC of the big banquet coming up in February in Surrey, BC. Tell us a little bit about what's going on there.
We have a bunch. The Canadian Motorcycle Hall of Fame has their inductions at various places in this country. As you can imagine, it's pretty hard to accommodate anybody at one particular spot. So what we tend to do is we had the most recent one in Toronto, and then the next one, as you mentioned, is going to be in British Columbia. Then we'll move to the east and do Quebec again, and we follow that pattern so that each region of the country is represented. Therefore, this upcoming Motorcycle Hall of Fame induction ceremony will center mostly on Western riders. And we're going to celebrate with a few people that are in the Motorcycle Hall of Fame already. Steve Crevier being one of them, Steve Baker. Baker, by the way, Scott, was he rode for Yamaha Canada, but he was actually from Bellingham, Washington. And he was the first American to score a world championship in superbike racing. He did that on the Yamaha Canada sponsored motorcycle. Anyways, he's going to be there. We'll have a chance to chat with him. Yeah, the induction is a very, very proud moment for a lot of people. I've seen a lot of people on stage doing this. It's really important to a lot of people, and it's important to the industry too. We enjoy some support from the Canadian motorcycle industry because we celebrate not all the accomplishments of the riders involved in this, but we celebrate motorcycling in general. Like the inductees into the Canadian Motorcycle Hall of Fame, road racers, dirt trackers, engine builders, people who donate their time, organizers, just the list goes on and on. But it has a lot to do with motorcycling. While I have the floor, I did want to drop a line to you because I know you appreciate this kind of stuff. Motorcycling has become so much of my life. And it was some time ago I came up with this saying, and it's basically true. And that is, if it's got nothing to do with motorcycles, it's got nothing to do with me. What do you think?
That's beautiful. Starting to get emotional over here, Frank.
Well, you know what? You just touched on a chord. Sorry for jumping in or save your thought. And you hear this in a lot of sports, but it's the people and the emotions that I witness. The guys wiping their eyes as they make their way up to the podium, and equally so, mothers wiping their eyes as their son's being attended to by the ambulance.
Sure.
And I will get a little emotional here, Scott, because this is the first time I've had the chance to talk about it in public.
Sure.
That is, last year, late in the year, we lost a really good guy. Grant Nesbitt with his name. He's the father of Stacy Nesbitt. Stacy is a history-making young lady who scored some championships that are world-renowned here in Canada. Anyway, Grant was a terrific guy. There is a little tribute on YouTube about him.
Sure.
And rather than me blabber on, I would invite you to have a look at that because the words that he speaks in that interview just radiate his love for motorcycle racing. And it's one of those things, Scott, we're gonna miss him big time. Thank you.
And this is one of the tributes I'm sure that you guys will be talking about in the upcoming Hall of Fame.
No question.
Yeah, it's a heartbreaking story, isn't it?
Well, it happens, and it happens in all kinds of sports. Not necessarily just motorsports either. We've lost people in hockey games and skiing and all kind of things. But when you lose them, you realize just how important it is to you what you're doing.
Sure. And you continue to do it. I mean, at your advanced age of 57, you're still
Thank you for that.
You're welcome. Pay me later. Call me. You owe me. You still continue to ride. It is the joy of your life, besides your family, of course. Tell us about what you do with your pals. I know that you get together with your pals, and how often, even in the dead of winter, sometimes you guys get out there. So tell us about the importance of you continuing at 56 or 57 years old, continuing in the sport yourself.
Just to clarify things, folks, I'm going on 76 next month. I'll be 76 years of age. Motorcycling keeps me young, Scott. It does. I spend quite a bit of time in my man cave, and sometimes I even work on the motorcycles. But I am surrounded by motorcycle posters and pictures of Yvonne Duhamel and Ricky Graham and Mike Halewood, and all those names would be recognized, of course. I also have a photo over there of Steve McQueen, who was good for motorcycling. Yep. I forgot where I was going with this. Your floor.
Hey, you mentioned Steve McQueen. There's a classic example of the sport and motorcycles in general getting out to the general public. And that's the important thing in spreading the word of your particular sport. Are you seeing an upswing in the love of the sport with the younger generation? Tell us about that.
I'm glad you touched on that because it is a bit of a sore spot. I recently heard that there was a very high percentage of North American kids that don't ride bicycles. And when I was told that, I shook my head and I said, no, there's no way. And the person said to me, when's the last time you saw a kid on a bicycle? And I thought, yeah, you're right. Kids aren't riding bicycles anymore. Now that's a problem. And KTM apparently has recognized this. They brought over what they call the scooter, I forget what it's called, but basically what it is a small motorcycle, no footrests on it, no controls, just handlebars, and the person's kids' feet touch the ground. They paddle along. Gets them on two wheels. It gets them the idea of balance and what have you. Because with bicycles out of the story, you can have a hard time getting somebody on a motorized bicycle. Yeah. So it is of concern. Recent numbers that have just come down the pipeline, as a matter of fact, just this past week, indicate that motorcycle sales are down a bit. Not a huge amount. One company was 13%, which is appreciable, but it goes down to another company at only 3%. So, but generally speaking, the market is down apparently. But if you go to an off-road event and you see this as an example, for instance, I'm sure it happens in motocross. I haven't been to a motocross race in quite some time, but I know they have a youth class. And we see it in off-road racing, like the Corduroy Enduro, for instance. There's lots and lots of kids riding there. And I envy them, Scott. You know, we mentioned earlier on how I first started riding a motorcycle was 16. A 16-year-old kid nowadays has 10 years experience.
Yeah, really, yeah. No kidding, eh? And probably a better quality bike than you were using when you were 16.
Yeah, just a bit. Just a bit. Yeah, the motorcycles have evolved. Over my lifetime, I've been very, very fortunate to have lived through these decades because, and not that there's not more changes coming down the line, but we've seen an enormous change in motorcycling where, you know, there was a time shortly past the Second World War where it was black leather jackets and greasy hair and noisy motorcycles and what have you. It's a far different story nowadays.
We've lost our greasy hair. Had no idea where it went.
That's part of the story for sure.
No kidding.
I've got an excuse though, and you don't have this. I've got an excuse. I keep putting the helmet on, and it takes my hair right off.
Yeah, there you go. I have no excuse at all. I just leave all of my hair on my back. That's the style in today. It's 2025, and speaking of 2025, summer is just around the corner. I know it's a little warm in your man cave there, so let's start thinking about 2025, the summer of. Tell us if you're an enthusiast, where in Ontario and where in Canada are you going to see the best competition for motorcycle racing?
Well, if we can get back to that, Scott, don't let me forget to respond to that. But one thing I wanted to touch on that I'd forgotten in my last dissertation was you mentioned that I do a fair amount of riding. My riding nowadays is strictly off-road. I have no intentions of getting license and insurance and all that kind of stuff. And I say that with some glib because I have the very, very good fortune of having tremendous neighbors. The Donnan family, they run a dairy farm just up the highway a bit from me here. These folks clear my driveway every winter, refuse to take money for it, have opened up access to a forested area that they own, that we've been able to set up a bunch of trails through. We have like 14 kilometers at last count of single track trail that we go out and get a lot of good exercise and enjoy nature as well, because we quite often walk those trails as well as ride them on motorcycles. So I'll mention a number of people who've helped me over my career and what have you. At this stage in my life, the Donnan family have made a huge impact on me because they've made all that stuff available right out my back door. And I really appreciate it. Thanks, guys.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. To keep the dream alive with you and your lads, eh? It's fun.
For sure.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit now that we've got that out of the way. Let's talk about the upcoming season. Where do enthusiasts go? Mossport, Shannonville. Where and when and where should we get our information from? I know that, frankly speaking, has been your column for so long. Tell us how we get in contact with you and learn a little bit more about the sport.
Well, various websites, of course, as far as the individual sports go. Cordero and Enduro has their own website. CSBK, the Bridgestone CSBK, I should mention, have their own website, and the motocross people have theirs. And so there's all kinds of stuff on the computer as far as what's going on and where. As far as what this guy's doing this summer, rather, I'll be working down at Shannonville Motorsport Park with the Fast School. I'm proud to be associated with that organization and have been for a number of years. The Fast School runs exclusively at Shannonville Motorsport Park, and Martin Hamel and all the crew down there are really fun to work with, and it's really great to work at a school where you see somebody come in who needs some guidance in terms of how they handle a motorcycle and what have you, and man, that school brings them right around, especially the 3-day course. So that's one
really
of my
cool.
Yeah, it's a really good school, very well attended too. If you're thinking of going to something like that, you'd be well to look into it. It's just fast riding school. It's online, of course. What isn't?
Sure, but what time of year is it, and how do they get in touch with you, or in touch with the event, so that they can make sure that they get there for those 3 days? Because that sounds like a really good. Any enthusiast wants to be there, correct?
Absolutely, yeah. Our name is Riding School, but the fact of the matter is people have to know how to ride before they get there. Once they've got the basics down,
Sure.
Luck after everything else. Thank you. So then I'll be doing the national series, and I've got some really big news. And the timing on this interview by you, Scott, rather, is incredibly good. And I'll touch on the national series in just one moment, but people that follow CSBK Racing will be well aware that Ben Young has won 4 championships in our superbike class, and he's done all those championships on the BMW S1000RR. Big news breaking just this morning, Scott, is Ben Young has signed with Honda Canada. He will be campaigning a Honda CB 1000RR through the 25 and 26 season. So he's got a 2-year contract with them, and very, very likable guy that I'm proud of, because I've watched his career since he first came and started racing with us. He's from Scotland originally. When he first came and started racing here in Canada, I think he was 14 years of age, and I've watched every year of his racing ever since, with one brief foray where he went back to Great Britain and ran in their Superbike series. But so anyways, Ben Young is on a Honda this year, and that's going to really liven things up for those for folks that follow the sport.
Absolutely, that's going to be
As far
exciting.
as venues go, we're gonna kick things off in May at Shannonville Motorsport Park, and then we moved. Oh geez, I should have brought a calendar with me. We'll be going back to Shubenacadie, Nova Scotia, Scott, which is the fun one, is the way we refer to that one, because getting down east has a very special flavor to it. And I mean that, and not only in the lobster. I'm talking, it's just that the people down there, the atmosphere, the racetrack is hugely demanding, and yet still with all very, very well liked. So we're looking forward to getting down there. Atlantic Motorsport Park, that one is, and that is just north of Halifax, Nova Scotia. Then we swing out west and visit. I'm not sure whether it's the new track, because there is a new track out there, and the name will come to me. My mind's a little flustered now as I get rambling along. There's a new track in Edmonton, and there's one in Calgary. So Calgary is Rocky Mountain Motorsport Park, and I think I've got that right. Edmonton is Torque Raceway. Yeah, I do have it right, Torque Raceway. We ran out in Edmonton a few years ago, but made a revisit as of just last summer.
And if you were to go to let's say Mosport or Torque Raceway in Edmonton for the day of racing, tell the folks that that have never been to an event what they would expect. What is the price to get in? How many races are there? Give us a little indication of what the day would look like.
Actually, if they drop me a line, I could probably get them a free pass to the races. But just kidding, just kidding. I'm not entirely sure what it costs, but I do remember. Let me share this with you as far as the dollar value of racing. Now, we just happened to be so lucky that we had Flat Track Canada run on Saturday night at last year's Shannonville race. Shannonville, or the Bayside track rather, is Flat Track, is right alongside the road race track. So they decided to have a Saturday night race, and it went over really, really well. I believe they're going to be doing it again this year. At any rate, so a fan came up to me and commented that he says, "This is like having a Christmas present in May." And I said, "What do you mean?" He says, "I come to the races, I've got free camping. I don't know if the firewood was free or very, very inexpensive anyway. He says, I get to watch all the qualifying and what have you that happens on Friday, all the racing that happens on Saturday, then switch over and watch a dirt track race on Saturday night, and come back to the road race track on Sunday for round 2 of the National Championship Series." He says, "What a bargain." I'll leave it at that. I don't know the prices, to be honest with you, what it costs to get in, but that is one instance where, and this fellow just walked right up to me, Scott. I was not soliciting. It was just like, wow, okay, I guess we're doing things right.
Well, it's always been known to be a great bang for your buck, and you've got action all the time when you're there. So, great entertainment, great sport, and it's been great chatting with you, my friend. This has been fun seeing for the first time. I haven't been there personally at your new man cave. I'm glad that you're keeping warm. I've got my woolly thong on right now, so thinking about your man cave.
It's nice and warm in here.
Yeah.
Nice here.
But
Just
listen, I wanted to thank you. Yes, I wanted to.
The cost of going to the races, what have you, and more importantly, the value, the dollar value of going to races. And one of the key things that I really love watching, and I watch for every single event that we go to, and that is to watch the families walking through the pit area. We have an open pit concept in CSBK Racing, where you're welcome to wander in and have a look at the mechanics working on the bikes, have a look at the riders and how they're prepping themselves, and if they have time, they all take the time to come out and sign autographs. Many of them have posters to give to the kids and to the older kids. So it's really a neat atmosphere, and then to watch those guys go out on motorized, they're jockeys is what they are, and they're in terrific physical condition, by the way. They're not lumbering down the highway, that's for sure. Anyway, thank you so much.
One of the main things that's always emphasized with my buddies that are motorcycle enthusiasts is the need for getting in proper shape to do this particular sport. How important is that, before we go? The importance of keeping in shape, because, like you said, you're 76 and you're still going at it. You've maintained your body very well over the years. How important is that?
Very, very, very important. It prevents you from getting hurt a lot of times. If you're in good shape and you can fight the bike if you're going through a rough area or whatever. It's really, really important. One thing that I've learned too as I age is the importance of stopping and resting now and again. It's rather than pushing myself and trying to keep up with the 40-year-olds who indeed are trying to catch up to the 20-year-olds.
Sure.
And I quite often will say to the guys, we have an area back in the forest where we have chairs that we can sit on and what have you, and I'll quite often grab myself a chair and sit back and say, "You guys want to do another lap around the trails? You go right ahead. I'm quite content to rest up, and I'll catch you next round." So that's important as well. But staying in shape during the winter months, I try to do snowshoeing. We finally have some snow today, But just generally walking the dog and all that kind of stuff. And we heat with firewood, so that keeps me pretty busy, and it's good exercise. But yeah, I can't wait for spring. The bike's sitting right over here with a little bit of work to be done on it yet. But we'll get that done, and we'll be riding again.
Absolutely, and a little bit of a taste of spring coming up in February in Surrey, BC. Well, you'll be emceeing an incredible event for the Canadian Motorcycle Hall of Fame. Good luck with that, and it'll just give you a little bit of a flavor as we go into the summer. And how would you like to end this interview, my friend?
Well, you mentioned the flavor going into the summer. How's this for dessert before supper? The same weekend that I'm going to be in British Columbia, which is February 13th, 15th to 15th, I believe it is, the Toronto Motorcycle Show is on.
Nice.
So this is a great opportunity for those in Southern Ontario to get down to the what I call the C&E grounds, Canadian National Exhibition grounds in downtown Toronto, and see the 2025 Manufacturers Motorcycle Show. So good timing on that. I hope the weather's good for that. But one thing I've learned over the last little while is getting in and out of Toronto. Get on a train is the best way to get there, and you don't have to fight the traffic and what have you. But yeah, Toronto Motorcycle Show coming up. So yeah, spring is definitely in the air.
Nice segue, my friend. And I will say that if I'm going to be going to the show in Toronto this year, I'll be using my side sticks, if you can see them in the back, because our show today is brought to you in part by Side Sticks, the world's best forearm crutches. If you want to work out and take your workouts to the next level and you have issues with mobility, Side Sticks are the way to go. And the show is also brought to you by Direct Kicks to the World Cup, my soccer TV show, and its book is now available on Amazon. I'd like to thank Frank Wood, my guest today. Good luck, Frank, the rest of the way out in this season, as well as in February at the amazing event. And we'll talk to you next time on the show. Thanks a lot.
Thanks for having me, Scott.
Cheers. We'll see you next time, everybody.